Welcome back to the Compressor Guru. Today we're going to do another episode concerning viewer comments. And I hear one of them might even be about me, the camera wife. Imagine that. And now, here's the Compressor Guru.
Thank you, camera wife. Yes, there's a lot of comments about you. Everybody loves you. You know, they tolerate me to put up with you or to get to you. I know. Uh, so, guys, this is just a continuation of an episode we did one or two back. And then at the end of this episode, I'm going on a weather rant. So stick around. I got some gripes, statistics, change in society rants. Comment 1. When we did the Saylor beall teardown, which ended up not being rebuilt at the customer's weird percentage values, but both cylinders were bad, and it brought up a couple of comments about why don't you just bore the cylinders and put oversized rings and pistons in them. And you got to realize that may sound simple, and if you had one bad cylinder in a V8 and you were just going to bore one cylinder, that might make economic sense. It might have made economic sense when automotive shops are set up to bore, your automotive engines. But with compressors, the cylinder, let's just say, cost $1,000. Now, you got both holes bad, and your pistons are 300 and 200 to replace your pistons with oversized pistons, and then you have another $200 to have it bored. This isn't having it honed. You have to have it bored, and it has to be done right. And a lot of machine shops charge you extra setup because it's not a V8 and they can't just set it in their machine, do their normal setup. It takes them some extra time because these small cylinders take extra setup time. So you got $700 in your parts and labor to oversize that cylinder, and you could buy that cylinder for $1,000. Are you really going to go to all that trouble to oversize it to save 30% on that particular part? And you may go, but it's still $300. But that's not exactly the point. Here's the sad truth. Shops that do this kind of work are getting fewer and fewer and fewer. Right now, to get a cylinder bored, it's about a 60-mile drive to the nearest machine shop that will bore a cylinder. Not hone a cylinder, bore a cylinder. And we're in the mountains, we're in Appalachia, but we're not really in the sticks. We're 25 miles from State College, we're 40 miles from Altoona, we're 40 miles from Du Bois. These are cities. Not big cities, but they're cities. So, I take 2 hours and drive back and forth to get the cylinder done. I got 700 in it. We're at $80 an hour. What are you doing? We have cats. Anyway, so that's why we don't really look at oversizing cylinders. And part of it is the sad fact that there's less and less real machine shops out there. Comment 2. Why don't we just load the pistons in through the top of the cylinder instead of loading them through the bottom? Well, there's a few machines that might work on, but the problem is these little machined areas, like on this particular Quincy cylinder, you can't load them from the top, or you risk breaking the ring if it gets stuck in this port as it's going down past it to load it originally. The second problem is, on your two-stage machines, usually your high-pressure rod, the bottom of the rod that connects onto the crankshaft won't fit through the piston hole, the cylinder where the high-pressure piston goes. The rod is often larger than the cylinder. So that's a really easy one. In one respect, on the high-pressure side, you can see here on this cutout how that ring could possibly get stuck in this port and break while you're loading it into the cylinder. Comment number 3, and I'm going to read this because I'll say it wrong if I do it from memory. This came from Alabama Welder Inspector. He's a frequent commenter on our channel. We appreciate all you guys. I enjoy seeing you work on some of the larger compressors. Not really a fan of IR, but anyway, ... I was just wondering about putting the fasteners in without any lubrication and how that affects the torque on the fastener. So it's a long comment, but that's the crux of the question and the very important reply. A lot of the newer Ingersolls have the graphene type, the silver, non-asbestos gaskets, especially up on the valve sections. Quincy, on some of the newer valve covers, uses those also. And you've seen me on the channel different times give you caution after caution after caution to clean the valve plate, clean the valve cover with brake clean, wipe it off dry, go wash your hands, and then handle the gaskets. Put your bolts in, torque them up, you're done. I had a customer, cannot recall his name, I wouldn't say it if I did, but he emailed me, these gaskets are leaking, and we really don't have a problem with these graphene gaskets. They're very good. Unfortunately, they're a one-use gasket, and I'm like, I don't understand, and we're getting his next order ready and to get him gaskets down to fix them up, and I'm like, I was going to send them to him for free, and then in our email exchanges, he told me this. He says, yeah, I put 30 weight oil on the bolts, put them down through the holes, torqued them up, and started it up, and everything leaked. You can't lubricate these bolts going into these graphene gaskets, because what he did is he destroyed every gasket he had that he used lubricated oil on. When you look in a tech manual, you will see torque spec, and if they're supposed to be wet, they'll say wet or lubricated. If you look at a torque chart for bolts, and there will be two different charts. One chart will be for a dry torque requirement. One set will be for a wet torque requirement. Your wet torque requirements are usually lower because you're not fighting the friction of the bolt and the threads. I'm not really an engineer that way, but especially you got to put them together dry. You have to have them clean. Even clean your hands, because the oil in your hands can make a difference. They are so touchy. So those are the comments I wanted to touch on today. Time for a weather rant. Oh wait, I forgot the comment about the camera wife. Let me find it. This was from about 2 months ago. It was an older episode. It was when we were putting a 15T together. But I love how this woman shows interest in what you're doing.
If only he knew.
We just had this conversation this morning at our Bible study. The guys we have a Zoom Bible study, and we were talking about people that don't know enough when they hear a car acting up and women just drive them, and I'm like, I don't mind. My wife was raised by a mechanic. Her dad had, camera wife, tell him who your dad was.
You mean like his name?
No, like what he did.
My dad was a mechanic. And he was a mechanic that in order to allow my mom to stay at home and raise us, he worked out in the strippings. He was up and down off stuff. He worked for Highway Equipment. I don't even know if they're still in business, but
I think they are.
He worked for them for years until he finally had enough of a nest egg that we built the garage that's now up behind our house. And I can remember as a kid, it was a family thing, you know. We poured the gutters, and the gutters had to sit for a while till we got enough money for the blocks. So every time it rained, we were down in there pushing the rainwater off there, keeping the cement clean.
You mean the footers?
Whatever.
Okay.
You know, the place where you put the foundation in. Anyway, so as a kid, we were all in the garage. When Dad needed help, everybody helped. But my dad's famous saying was, if I had something wrong with my car and I'd say, hey, Dad, it's making this noise. And he'd check it all out. And if he couldn't find anything wrong, he'd say, just turn up the radio. Is that the kind of story you wanted?
No.
My dad was a really good mechanic, though. And
Yes, he was.
And he took care of everybody. If it was a woman who was a widow, he made sure he picked up her car and he took it back so that he would leave a vehicle there in case she needed one. But my dad taught me to change a tire, to change the oil, to grease the car. We did all of those things. So I pretty much know.
You've shown your age.
Why?
Cars today don't have grease fittings. So.
Wow, maybe that's why I haven't been doing it lately. No, but my dad taught me how to listen for things in a car, and if it's going to make this noise, you should take it and find out why.
So I've been a mechanic nearly all my professional life. And me and my father-in-law, Eric, we were heading for a golf course that had lights that you could play at night. It was a little par 3 down in Altoona. It was fun. And he and I were going to go down and play around a par 3. And we're going down the mountain heading for Altoona. And we pass a school bus with this blonde standing outside with a bunch of kids standing outside. And
wasn't she a good-looking blonde?
yeah,
I was a band director, so I had my kids, and we were on our way to an event where we were performing, and the bus broke down, and we were not going to make it in time. And I saw. Did you have the black and white van then?
I think I had a truck. I think I was in the old blue Ford.
Anyway, I saw these guys go by, and I'm like, wait, my dad's in there. He's a mechanic. He can help us. My dad was a mechanic. You're
What am I?
the compressor guru. Yeah. Okay.
I don't let her live that one down. Now it's time for the weather rant. I don't even know how cold it was this morning. But
At least negative 12.
that was when the sun was hitting the thermometer
It
on
was.
the back porch. So here's a societal problem. I don't know if it's good or bad. Maybe we got smarter. Maybe we got lazier. You tell me. You're not lazy. You tell me in the comments. When I went in business, when it got below 10 degrees, then it got below 5 degrees, then it got below 0, I could tell actually about how cold it was by how often the phone was ringing because of breakdowns. Primarily this was in the strippings, but this also happened with pressure switches. We've done an episode on that. But in recent days, we've not been above freezing for a month. We've had one major snowstorm. It was 12 to 20 below, somewhere around that, here this morning. By the way, John in Panama, enjoy your weather, my friend. So, that being said, the phone's not ringing like it normally does. I think people go, it's not worth it to work in this cold. Or two other possibilities. One is they go, it's cold out, I'm not going to work. I don't really think that's so much it. I think the third possibility might be that I have educated my local customers to the point where they know how to take care of their machines in the winter so they're not giving them trouble.
Let's go with that one.
Yeah, we're going to go with that one. And by the way, we might be doing one more of these comment episodes because we don't have anything really interesting in the shop to work on or show you. We have some work, but we've already done those episodes. So leave a comment about the questions you have, and we'll probably have at least one more of these episodes before we go back to turning wrench. Guys.
Hey, folks, before he says his parting things here, don't let him fool you. He's not going out in that big, cold garage because it's been below zero for so long here that he can't possibly get the garage heated up. And he talks about, well, people don't want to go out and start up their things.
It costs $60 a day.
He doesn't want to go out and start his up.
$60 a day to heat that building up.
Okay, end of my rant. Go ahead, darling.
So, I'm sick of the cold. There's my rant. But it was an observation on society. It was an observation on people taking better care of their equipment. It was an observation on maybe people were getting lazy. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Guys, thank you. God bless. Leave a comment. Leave a question. We'll see you in 2 weeks. God bless.